Hello everyone, welcome to Sports Insider. I am Dan Labbe, joined as always by Chris Fedor, and we have a packed show for you today. We're going to cover all things Cleveland sports. We've got Browns with Mary Kay Cabot right off the bat. Then we're going to talk Indians with Paul Hoynes after that, and then we're going to bring in our new Cavs beat reporter Chris Haynes to talk Cavaliers. They have media day, of course, tomorrow, Chris. So a lot of excitement now building about the Cavaliers. But as promised, let's start things off talking Browns. Let's bring in our Browns beat reporter Mary Kay Cabot. Mary Kay, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay, so Mary Kay, it is the bye week. I want to start, though, with Joe Hayden, because we talked about him a lot on Sunday and Monday, and then Mike Pettin, I don't know if you want to say called him out a little bit, but he had some comments about Hayden. Hayden sort of acknowledged that he needed to be better. What have you thought about how everything's kind of played out around Joe this week?
Well, you know what? I think it's been good. I like the fact that Mike felt like he could kind of, call him out just a little bit and say, hey, look, we need him to be his best when his best is needed. We need him to step up and make those kind of plays at the end of the game. That's what you would expect from a number 7 overall pick. That's what you would expect from a Pro Bowler and somebody that you just paid $68 million to, including $45 million in total guarantees. So that's what you need from that guy. You showed your faith in him, and, he's got to make those plays. So I know that Joe is an incredibly hard worker, but I do think that he's going to have to step it up even a little bit more and leave nothing to chance. He's got to do a little bit more film work. He's got to do a little bit more on the judge. He's got to do a little bit more speed work or whatever it takes. He's got to bump everything up 10%.
Mary Kay, if Joe Hayden can't return to the form that he showed last year, can the Browns' defense be the defense that a lot of us anticipated it being coming into the year?
Well, not if Justin Gilbert's going to continue to struggle. If those two guys can elevate their level of play, if Justin Gilbert can get up to speed and play at a very high level, and if Joe can, just kind of, I really don't think it's panic time by any stretch of the imagination. These are Super Bowl winning quarterbacks that he's gone against. These are, some good veteran receivers. I don't think it's time for him to panic, but he does have to get back to the point where, let's look at that game last year where he was completely shutting down A.J. Green. He needs to get back to that, where he is in position to make the play, and you see him knock down the pass or perhaps pick it off or, break it up, do whatever it takes. And if he can do that, then they can be the defense that they want to be.
Mary Kay, I've always felt watching Joe Hayden that he's a little bit grabby, and he has gotten away with some things in the past. A couple of them come to mind where he tugged on the jersey of A.J. Green. A.J. Green turned to the official and was looking for a flag. It didn't happen. Is it possible that the new rules are impacting Joe Hayden maybe more than we anticipated?
Yeah, I think they are, and I think he's playing a little too tentative right now under the new rules. I actually did think he got away with a little bit of contact with Steve Smith in the end zone in this past game. I think that's something that if they were calling the game very tightly, they could have probably called him for that. But I think that, maybe the new rules have gotten into his head just the slightest bit. So what he needs to do is, I think, dial it up a little bit, be a little bit more aggressive, and then see what he can get away with. And then maybe I think that he can get back to being just a little bit more aggressive. And, sometimes these guys get calls go their way based on reputation, or if you're at home, he needs to try to get away with just a little bit more.
Mary Kay, what's happened to Justin Gilbert? It seemed like he had a really good camp. His first preseason game, he played well, and then things just fell apart. Maybe bounced back a little bit against New Orleans, but we saw kind of the old Justin Gilbert again against Baltimore. What's happened to him, and what can the Browns do?
Well, he only played 14 snaps against Baltimore compared to 58 or 59 in the first game, which was way too much. They should have started him out with fewer snaps, but they didn't have a whole lot of options at that point because right now they just don't have anybody that was better than him. When you have 3 and 4 wides out there, they kind of had to go with their number 8 overall pick in those situations. So the game against Baltimore didn't lend itself to that. He didn't have to be out there as much. They only got 14 snaps. Some of the snaps that he did not do well. I mean, that pass interference penalty, that 31-yarder with obviously that was huge. And it was absolutely huge, and he just, wasn't, in position. He sort of seemed like he panicked there. If you at least, you got to turn around, you got to, show that you're going for the ball and stuff like that. So, I think that, once again, this bye week is a good opportunity for some of those guys to kind of watch their own film and reset where they're at.
Is there any chance that during the bye week here, Mary Kay, that the Browns make personnel changes on defense?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're going to have to look at the defensive front and tweak that a little bit and find some guys who are doing a better job at stopping the run and either utilize them more or tweak the scheme in some way. But whatever the case is, they need to try to shore up the run defense. Now, some of it is just it takes a while for guys to work together in it. And I think as you go along, you'll see it get better. But I do think that they're going to have to evaluate if some of the guys are struggling in the scheme and either coach them up differently or replace them, at least in some situations.
Mary Kay, will Brian Hoyer's fate ultimately be determined by these next 4 or 5 games? You think they're winnable games. Is that ultimately going to be what determines if Brian Hoyer can start for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that these guys have pretty much already determined that Johnny Manziel really isn't ready to be starting games right now. So I don't think there's any sense of, hey, you know what, Brian's just keeping the feet warm until Johnny's ready. I don't think this is a year where they're looking at it like that at all. I think Brian has established himself as the starting quarterback. It's his team. He's running the offense well. And I do think these are a bunch of winnable games coming up. And they do need to start winning them. And one thing that they have done very well, obviously, no turnovers, the only team with no turnovers. And they have to continue to do that. They can't start turning the ball over and expect that they're going to start to win games. So that's been a key the first couple of weeks.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot joining us on Sports Insider. Looking ahead to the Titans quickly, Mary Kay, what challenges do you think they pose to the Browns? It seems to be the easiest opponent they've played so far, but anyone who's watched the Browns knows there is no such thing as an easy opponent since they came back. What challenges do you think they pose, and what can the Browns do to try and come away with a win in that game?
Well, you know what, just in general, they don't live up to the standards of some of the teams that the Browns have been playing to this point. They have faced 3 Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. Well, nobody even knows for sure who's going to start at quarterback for the Titans in this next game. So, it's really kind of up in the air. I think it's a game that they should go down there and be able to win. You don't see any real superstars on the team. It's hard, at times to even think of, who do you have to circle in red, on the Titans and say, we've got to take this guy out of the game. So it's not a team that, they're going to really have to be laying awake at night thinking, boy, how are we going to stop Ben Roethlisberger, in this game. So I think it's a game where some guys can probably come up big.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot, we appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to shift gears momentarily to talk Indians. We'll bring in Paul Hoynes, but Chris, I mentioned these next 5 games for the Browns. And I feel like, look, this football team, if they're going to talk about winning, if they're going to talk about turning things around, I don't think that we should be scared to say 4-1 is a reasonable expectation.
Yeah.
3-2 is okay, but you should be able to go 4-1 in these next 5.
Yeah, I think the Browns have shown in the first 3 that they can compete with some of the better teams in the NFL. So if that's the case, if they can compete with the Saints and the Steelers and the Ravens, they should be able to beat the Buccaneers and the Raiders and the Tennessee Titans. And I think that's the next step for this team. They've shown that they can hang in there with some divisional opponents. They have to show that they can take care of business against teams that they're better than. That hasn't always been the case with the Browns.
And then you can be in good shape going into that Thursday night game in Cincinnati, which will be absolutely enormous if the Browns can go 4-1 in these next 5. All right, let's shift gears. Let's bring in Paul Hoynes, our Indians beat writer. Hoynesy, how are you today?
Good, guys. How you doing?
All right, well, Paul, the Indians extended their playoff chances by a day at least. If the A's and Royals win today, the Indians are done. What's the feeling like in that clubhouse right now? Do they feel like there's still a chance, or do you kind of get the feel that they kind of know what's coming?
You know, it's ironic. They played a stretch of 30 games in almost in 30 days, and you know, they're dying for an off day, but this is the wrong time to have an off day. I was talking to David Murphy after the game, and he said, you know, they'd really like to be playing tonight so they have a little bit of control over their destiny, but, you know, they don't right now, and they could get eliminated while sitting at home watching the games on TV.
Now, you mentioned it when it comes to the Indians. 3 games left. They're against Tampa Bay. They need a lot of help. There's no question about that, Hoynes. Is there a feeling in the clubhouse, though, that this is something that can get done, or do they understand that they kind of put themselves in a really difficult spot?
Yeah, I think they do understand that they put themselves, you know, in the hole. Even if they win out and the scenario works out where Kansas City or Oakland loses their remaining games, they still have to play a playoff game to get in to the knockout round, the wild card. I mean, I think that's the scenario, and so it's the longest of long shots. But the fact that they kept their chances alive into the last 3 games of a 162 game season, you know, says something about them. But it also, you know, speaks for probably an opportunity loss.
Hoynes, Corey Kluber. Obviously, we're doing kind of a big Corey Kluber appreciation today on the site at cleveland.com/tribe, and you got to check that out if you haven't yet. One of the things we're doing is we're kind of looking at the best Corey Kluber moments. When all is said and done this season, what game stands out to you as like the ultimate Corey Kluber 2014 game?
You know, I've got a couple of them. I did some for the series we're doing today, and I think the first one is the last one against the Twins. You know, granted, not the greatest lineup, but you know, in a game where the Indians had to win to keep their swim postseason chances alive, he goes out there and strikes out 14 guys. You know, and just dominates the lineup. They win 7-2. You know, to me, that kind of personified what a number 1 starter does, what a Cy Young candidate does. You deliver in the clutch for your team. You almost take the game over single-handedly. You're telling your teammates, score 1 run and this thing is over. And you know, that's what he did, and that's what he did basically on the trip. You know, he did the same thing in Houston when he struck out 14 guys. Probably my next. The next favorite start, or the next best start, I guess, for Kluber was his 85 pitch complete game against Seattle when he outpitched Felix Hernandez, I think on July 30th. I had to be reminded of that. Jamie Turner, I'd be remiss if I took credit for that. Jamie Turner wrote me and said, "You forgot this game," and how could I get that game? But it went by so fast. It was like 2 hours and 10 minutes. It kind of got erased from my memory banks.
Yeah, and the other thing about that one too, Hoynes, just doing a little research on that particular game. Yes, it was against Felix Hernandez, but the Indians had lost 5 of 6, and just hours earlier, they traded Justin Masterson to the St. Louis Cardinals, and we were all thinking, okay, who's going to step in that role left behind by Masterson? Kluber answered.
Yeah, he certainly did, Chris, and I think he had assumed that role long before that because Justin Masterson had just struggled from the outset and really had a tough year. And Kluber kind of stepped into that role. He was already the number 1 guy, but if you needed to have that stamp on your forehead, he certainly did it that night. In 2 hours, 10 minutes, I think 8 strikeouts, and it wasn't even close. I mean, he gave up 3 hits, but it could have been. It was almost as dominating as a no-hitter.
Hoynes, I remember about 5-6 years ago, then Fausto Carmona, now Roberto Hernandez, whatever his name is at this point of his career. I remember when he had that great season and he was in the conversation for the Cy Young, and he just didn't duplicate it after that. When it comes to Corey-Kluber, is this season real? Is this what's going to be expected? Is this something that should be expected of him moving forward?
That's a great question because certainly, he's kind of come out of the mist here. I don't think anyone was expecting this kind of season, except Terry Francona. Francona he was really trumpeting this guy, from the get-go in spring training that he thought he had the ability and the stuff to be one of the better pitchers in the American League, and he certainly was right. You just don't know how a guy's going to respond to a season like this. How is he going to handle it physically? What is his bounce back capability after carrying the load he's carried this year? I think toward the end of this season he lost 3 straight, and I wrote and a bunch of other people wrote that it looked like he was running out of gas, and he had kind of hit the wall. He was at that 200 inning point for the first time in his career. Kluber said, no, I'm not tired. I've just got to work something out in my mechanics. And he was right. I mean, he's won his last 4 starts. He struck out 43 guys. I think he's allowed like 3 runs in almost 40 innings. So I guess Corey knew what he was talking about. So in that regard, that I think that bodes well for next year. Mm-hmm. But with pitchers, you just never know. It's the consistency. It is the key to a great pitcher and a great pitching career. And we have to see. We haven't seen Kluber hasn't been in the big leagues long enough to really give us that indication yet.
Paul, you mentioned next year, and of course, with the Indians on the brink of elimination, we kind of start to turn our focus there. This is an Indians team that has a lot of control over guys who are key players on this club, including Corey-Kluber, but position players as well. Yan Gomes is a guy they have control over. Michael Brantley, they've got these guys locked up, or they have club control for a while. Can they build off of this season, even if they end up missing the playoffs, considering what they've found in their young pitching staff?
I really do. I think that's a great question. If you look at this team, the veterans are the guys that kind of let this team down. Masterson, Asdrubal Cabrera, Ryan Rayburn, Nick Swisher both got injured. The young guys really kind of picked this team up. I mean, they had some veteran guys in the bullpen that helped, but Cody Allen is the closer. This is maybe his second full year, and guys like Shaw, they haven't been around that long. So it was the young guys that really kind of carried this club to a winning record. Guys like Jose Ramirez came up, and a guy like. Kipnis isn't a veteran, but he certainly didn't have a great year. But guys like Gomes and Brantley, and Lonnie Chisenhall, as inconsistent offensively that he's been, he's still had a solid year. So those kind of guys really pushed this team. And Carlos Santana, I'd be remiss if I didn't say him. Those are all pretty young guys, and guys like you said that are controllable or have signed extensions. So that's promising, but what this team has to do, to me, and what they didn't do after last season, after 92 wins, they have to go out and improve this team dramatically. You can't win consistently. You have to add pieces when you need to add pieces. They didn't do it after last season, and I don't know if they're going to do it this year, but I would like to see them do it this winter.
All right, Paul, we appreciate you taking the time out.
Thanks, guys.
Paul Hoynes, our Indians beat writer, joining us to, of course, talk Indians. And now we will shift gears once again, and we're going to introduce you to a new member of our staff here at cleveland.com and Northeast Ohio Media Group, our new Cavaliers beat writer, Chris Haynes, joining us here live in studio. Chris, welcome aboard.
Well, thanks for having me in this luxurious studio you have right here, guys.
Hey, look, another guy that towers over me. Terrific.
All right, Chris, Media Day is upon us tomorrow. Of course, there's a lot of excitement about this Cavaliers team. It's going to be a circus there at Cleveland courts tomorrow.
Yeah, it definitely starts tomorrow, but it's going to be a circus all season long. You know, you think about guys having to adjust their games and adapt, but all that's going to start tomorrow, media day. We're going to see what their answers are to some of these tough questions, because a lot of these guys haven't, had the opportunity to answer some of the questions that we're going to hit them with tomorrow. So tomorrow's media day is definitely going to be a telling point.
And this is really the first chance where we're going to get to formally hear from LeBron-James. I know he spoke at his Akron coming home thing. He spoke at his show premiere, but this is the first time that the media is really going to get to talk to him since he came back.
Yeah, he has a lot. We have a lot of answers. I mean, we have a lot of questions for this guy, because one thing about LeBron, we know why he came back. There's a plethora of things, the reason why he came back. City of Cleveland, inner city, wants to help the kids, be a role model, things of that nature. But guys, there's still some questions. When did he actually want to come back? When did he know he was coming back? So there's a bunch of questions out there that need to be answered. And media day, if everybody is asking the right questions, we definitely should get some answers tomorrow.
Chris, when do you think he started to think about a return to Cleveland?
You know what? I really think that over his time, even when he did go to Miami, I always thought his legacy was going to be tainted if he spent the majority of his career there in Miami alongside some of those superstars in Miami. It's one thing to do it in Cleveland and have guys like Kevin Love come to you, but to go out, a guy of his stature, to go outside of his team and go somewhere else and do that, I just think that would have hung over his head a while. So I think there's some things with Wade's injuries going down. Didn't know how long he was going to be able to hold up. Chris Bosh, we just don't know with that guy. He's on and off. So I think it was a situation. Was like, well, I feel like with Kyrie Irving, he's always said he felt like he has the potential to be a top point guard in this league, or the best point guard in this league. I think he felt like, hey, maybe in my prime I should go. He was thinking before, maybe towards the later part of my career. But I think sometime midway in the season, that's when things started circulating in his head about that.
We all kind of know about Kevin Love and the questions that come with him about winning in Minnesota and injury history. Kyrie Irving, though, kind of has the same sort of baggage, and maybe we've seen a little drama from him as well over the last few years. Is he maybe, of those big three, the biggest question mark? Just kind of based on that
I get
stuff?
what you're saying. No, I get what you're saying. I would lean more towards saying, me personally, Kevin Love is probably the biggest question mark, because I think Kyrie, him being over there with the Olympics, playing along with those great players, that's going to be a great jumpstart for him to be able to fill out his role with this team, because now he got Kevin Love, LeBron-James, and now he knows how to play with those guys. So I think the adjustment, it will be a much more smoother transition for him. Kevin Love, on the other hand, has yet to get his team to the playoffs. Is a lot of people consider him to be top 5 or a top 10 player in the league. So I think it's more on his shoulder to try to make sure, hey, I'm gonna come in here and fit and make sure all the pieces run together. So accordingly, so I think it's more on Kevin Love than Kyrie.
Okay.
Chris, they haven't had training camp yet. It's really, really early.
Yeah.
But what would be a successful season for this team with this roster, with a new coach, and everything that happened this offseason?
A successful season. I see no reason why they shouldn't come out the East. I think with all the additions they made, and these are just not guys. I heard James Jones. I saw your post a couple of days ago with James Jones saying, hey, it's just paper. And that's true for a lot of teams, but you got a lot of quality guys on this team. It's not just guys who just put up stats. These are a lot of smart guys. Kevin Love is smart. Kyrie Irving is smart. These guys, they'll figure out how to play together down the road. But I think anything short of the Eastern Conference, representing the East in the finals would be a disappointment. I really think they're the favorites, and if all bodes well health-wise, I don't see why that shouldn't happen.
David Blatt, of course. Chris, you've written a little bit about David Blatt recently and talked to him in Vegas. What are your impressions of David Blatt?
I spoke with David during Summer League. Had a couple minutes to spend with him, and just to pick his brain a little bit. Extraordinary guy, great basketball mind. He really knows his X's and O's, and you can tell he has a feel for basketball and players. The one thing to look out for throughout the course of the season is that he's cause I talked to you about this before, Chris. He reminds me of a Popovich type coach when you talk about his offensive system, where all 5 guys on the court have an opportunity to score at all times. Everybody's moving, pick and pop, curls, back screen, back doors, and whatnot. It's going to be interesting to see how his system runs with Kevin Love, LeBron James, Kyrie Irving. Because we all know in the NBA, sometimes you're going to need those players to play some isolation and some one-on-one basketball. It's not always the college system of guys moving all around. So he's going to have to adjust a little bit. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he adjusts to the challenge of playing or coaching these superstar players.
Chris, if there's a weakness on this team, a lot of fans are going to point to the middle.
Yeah.
They don't have that rim protector. Brendan Haywood is a guy that they traded for, could be that guy, didn't play at all last season. You wrote something about him today that he's going to be ready for the start of training camp. Can he fill that void in the middle?
You know, that's a big if. You know, if he's healthy, there's no doubt about it. I think he's definitely, at this point of his career, I think he could definitely be probably a better rim protector than Varejao out there. But, you know, the one thing about Haywood is that a lot of people didn't really feel that he would possibly even be ready this upcoming season. So he is accelerating, you know, he is recovering, and he will be practicing. There's still some limitations he has with that foot, but he will be practicing, and they're hoping to get him cleared soon. But guys, man, if you're dependent on him, you're in trouble right now. It's going to be a luxury if you get him on, but I just wouldn't put high hopes on him right now.
I asked James Jones the question. He didn't want to answer it. He said, again, like you said, all names on a piece of paper. But I'll ask you, the big three here in Cleveland with Kyrie, LeBron, and Love versus the big three in Miami when they got together in Miami in 2010. Which one's better?
I have to go with the 2010.
Okay.
You're talking about Dwayne Wade at that time, who was a top 5 player, Chris Bosh, top 10 player. I have to go with those guys. And they were more accomplished, I think, during that time than Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving is at right now. So I'm going with 2010.
Tristan Thompson, one of those young guys that has been around on this roster now for a little while. What's his role with the team this year?
Man, who knows? Man?
That's why I'm asking
He's
you.
You asking, well, hey, I need some answers myself, you know. But I think Tristan, the one benefit to him in his game, he's a versatile player. Yeah. LeBron coming over here, Kevin Love coming over here, that's definitely going to take some minutes away from him. Like you said, that center spot, Chris, is definitely, that's the weak point right there. Tristan can play a little center, especially right now when you don't have a lot of real legitimate 7-footers in the league right now. Tristan come over and slide over and play some 5 and be an athletic guy, run up and down, beat those guys up and down the court. So I still see there's a great opportunity for him to have a productive year, but definitely minutes and production, I definitely see them being a drop.
In free agency, just free agency, not the trade. In free agency, they added LeBron, they added James Jones, Mike Miller, Sean Marion. Of the guys not named LeBron, who's the biggest pickup?
The free agency.
The free agent.
I think you have to go with Mike Miller at this point. I think he's going to be somebody who's going to keep the floor space, allow Kyrie Irving, LeBron James to dominate and make their moves out on the basketball court. James Jones, I like James Jones, covered him when he was in Portland. Really good guy. But I just see him being somebody who plays here and probably won't play again until another couple of weeks. Sean Marion, he's going to be a versatile defender, but you have a versatile defender in LeBron James. So I just don't really see a lot of minutes right there. But I think Mike Miller, with his versatility, because he could defend as well, I think he's going to make the biggest impact when you're talking about free agency.
That's the thing that people don't focus on when it comes to Mike Miller. He rebounds and he defends a little bit too.
No, he does. And that's one key that I definitely think is going to get him over the top when you're comparing his minutes to Sean Marion. I have to go with Mike.
Yeah.
And adding those veterans, guys that know their roles, that's kind of been lacking on this team recently. How does that help a guy like Dion Waiters, who's sort of been the quintessential, I want to be this guy, but the team wants me to be this guy?
Yeah, no, I love me some Dion Waiters. I really think he has the potential to be a special kid in this league, but it's going to be an adjustment period for him. I don't know. All signs are pointing to him starting right now, but he's going to have to change some ugly ways. I'm talking about on the basketball court. Yeah. He's going to have to adapt and adjust. And LeBron, those guys, they're going to get on him because Kyrie and Dion, they had the freedom to do whatever they wanted these last couple of years with nobody holding them accountable. Now you got LeBron James, Mike Miller, Sean Marion. Those guys are going to let you know if you're screwing up or not. So they'll get him on task. So this will be a good experience for Dion. I think he'll adjust. It's going to take some time, him and Kyrie, but they'll get it together. They're smart players.
I got to eliminate that 22-foot step-back jumper from
I think everybody should probably just eliminate that one. One-word answer from each of you before we go. You mentioned that the Cavs should come out of the East. Chris, I know you tend to agree with that. So who in the West should this team be most scared of seeing in the finals?
Shoot, San Antonio. You see what San Antonio did to Miami?
Yep.
Ooh, boy, that was an onslaught.
I respect San Antonio a lot. They've got pop. They've got their core that's coming back. I just think from a matchup standpoint, when you get in the NBA Finals, it's a game of matchups. And Oklahoma City, where they're strong, the Cavs are strong. And I'm not going to say that everybody's going to cancel everybody out, but Ibaka and Love, that's a tough contest for the Cavs. LeBron versus Durant. Again, if there's some small forward that can play LeBron even, it's probably Durant. And Westbrook versus Kyrie, the edge goes to Westbrook. Then it comes down to the others. But I think that matchup in a 7-game series is really tough for the Cavs.
That was way more than one word.
I had to explain it because it was Oklahoma City, and people are like, what? Oklahoma City?
Yeah, that's how I was. I was like, what? Yeah, exactly.
I saw the look you gave me over here.
I agree.
All right, everybody's excited about the Cavs' big three. I'm excited about the big three we've got covering the Cavs, these two, and also Joe Varden, who we had on the show, I believe it was last week. Guys, it's exciting. Cavs Media Day tomorrow. You'll have full coverage at cleveland.com/Cavs throughout the day, and of course after Media Day. And also our thanks to Mary Kay Cabot and Paul Hoynes for joining us today. I'm Dan Labbe. Thanks for watching.